Hello everybody, I just wanted to make a video here about Pocahontas and John Smith. However, the main purpose of this video is to check out this camera, check out the audio, and see if just everything is working, because I've never filmed a video like this. So, just an excuse here, I don't even have a script, I'm just kind of going to go off the cuff. But the topic of this video is most people would be surprised to learn that John Smith and Pocahontas never had any romantic involvement, never had a crush on each other, nothing, never anything. But she does have a romantic relationship with somebody, and that is John Rolfe. So why don't we associate them together? Why is it always John Smith instead? And to kind of like go backwards through time, starting at the present day, I think the most recent movie that has been made about this is called The New World, directed by Terrence Malick, and it kind of has a love triangle there. John Rolfe is a character in it, also John Smith, but it starts off with like the John Smith romance. And then obviously, if we go back to the 1990s, there's Pocahontas, the Disney movie, and that has a significant, probably a significant plant on people's minds of how they perceive this whole story of Jamestown, probably because like most people have watched this version of it, and yeah, entirely made up. But even before Disney, there is another story here, Captain John Smith and Pocahontas, 1953, a Western movie. I have not seen this one, and just looking at the trailer for it, it looks really bad. But it has a John Smith and Pocahontas romance. So, who is to blame for creating this like fictional storyline? And the story goes way before even 1953, all the way back to 1803. And a book was written that year, and the book is called Travels of 4 Years and a Half in the United States of America, during the years 1789, 1799, 1800, 1801, and 1802. Written by John Davis. So this guy obviously traveled through America, the USA, for 4.5 years, wrote a book about it. And throughout the book, he is giving some history, and he's doing what is called myth building in America. And he tells this whole story of John Smith and Pocahontas, and he even goes into like John Smith is like writing her poems, singing songs to her. And I didn't want to read the whole thing because I didn't want it to distort my view of it, but you can find the entire thing online. There's transcripts of this book available for free, and yeah, he is just like completely making it up. And the funny thing is, throughout the story, like at the very end, he's like, I have left no stone unturned in writing this story. This is entirely true. I've done like my most diligent research to forming this story, and it's entirely made up. So maybe there was some other people in Virginia at the time like helping him out with this lie, but it seems like he just made it up for the sake of it. Why would he just make up a story? Well, it is myth building. America's a new country. We want cool stories, and it's kind of a cool story. A princess, a Chief Powhatan's princess falls in love with a soldier of fortune, a like rough, hard-handed guy. It's a cool story. But what is the true story between John Smith and John Rolfe and Pocahontas? Well, it starts with John Smith and him becoming like the leader of Jamestown, you could say. But John Smith gets captured, and he's about to be killed by Chief Powhatan, and there's going to be a big stone that is dropped on his head as part of like the execution ritual. Some people say this is entirely made up. I personally believe it actually happened. But whenever he's about to get executed, Pocahontas puts her head on top of his so they can't drop a rock on it, and she convinces King Powhatan not to kill him. Now, maybe a more credible explanation of this is that this was a like induction ceremony for John Smith, and there's other theories for that, but I won't get into it. But either way, John Smith really thought he was going to die here. Pocahontas gets credit for saving him. And then, not only that, John Smith also credits Pocahontas for saving them during the first starving time, not the big starving time, but there was like that second winter they had to get through where John Smith was in charge. Pocahontas kept on bringing food and supplies, And it seems like because she really she really respected John Smith, not liked him as in had a crush on him. She is 11 years old at this time. She was like 10 years old whenever she saved him from the rock. She doesn't have a birth certificate, so we don't know her exact age, but like that, around that age. But after she brings food and supplies, she kind of disappears for a while, and partially because John Smith is gone. So maybe she didn't respect the current leaders. Maybe there's that. There's also a theory that now that she had hit puberty and she was now actually becoming a more mature adult, that King Powhatan didn't want her hanging around all the English men, because there was not a lot of women yet at Jamestown. So whatever it was, she doesn't come around as often. And it is not until April 1613 that she is captured by Samuel Argyle, who, and a war had started without John Smith there to negotiate things. Things got really tense between the Powhatan's tribes and the English. So there was fighting taking place. They didn't fight Pocahontas. They just captured her. They tricked her, got her aboard the boat, and kidnapped her pretty much. And they were holding her to have negotiations to free some of their own people that the Indians had captured. She was captured for a year, over a year. Technically, I guess she never got returned. But I guess the negotiations didn't go too well, because in 1614, in April, so about a year later after getting captured, she marries John Rolfe. John Rolfe is most famous for introducing tobacco into Jamestown and, getting that cash crop started. So he is famous for that. But he also marries Pocahontas. And we don't have like a lot of primary sources for this, but there is a letter still preserved of John Rolfe asking the governor of Jamestown if he can marry Pocahontas. So he was asking permission before he did the marriage. And he says, can I marry Pocahontas, to whom my heart and best thoughts are, and have a long time been so entangled and enthralled, and in so intricate a labyrinth, that I was even awearied to unwind myself thereout. But Almighty God, who has never failed, that truly invoke his holy name, hath opened the gate, and led me by the hand, that I may plainly see and discern the safe paths wherein we tried. So he goes on to say, he's like, I get it. I get why you wouldn't want me to marry an Indian. He says, her education has been rude, her manners are barbarous, her generation accursed. Not very romantic here, and where he's just insulting everything about her. But he does say that Pocahontas has a great appearance of love to me. She has a desire to be taught and instructed in the knowledge of God. She has a capableness of understanding, her aptness and willingness to receive any good impressions, and also the spiritual beside her own incitements stirring me up hereunto. Pocahontas, according to John Rolfe, has interest in John Rolfe. John Rolfe is like kept up at night about Pocahontas. He even says at one point that his attraction to her might have been formed from the devil, and he thought that for a long time. But then he started to like work it out, and he's like, no, I actually believe God has put this desire in me so that I can convert her into Christianity, and thus hopefully her people will convert to Christianity. With that, they get married. Shortly thereafter, in 1617, so what was the last date we had? 1614. So 3 years later, Pocahontas does have a kid. But she does die in England in March 1617. So that's kind of like a tragedy there. They're not even married for very long. Pocahontas meets the king and queen, and pretty much right after that dies. So back to the question, why do we always associate Pocahontas with John Smith? And the literal answer is that John Davis, who wrote the book, completely making up the story. But the reason why people latch on to his story so much is because it's a lot better of a myth, of a story, than the true story of Pocahontas, where it's kind of tragic. It's a little awkward because John Rolfe's like, I'm in love with her. It's weird to marry her because she's an Indian, so I'm going to do it just to make her a Christian. So you can kind of see why people go with the John Smith storyline instead. And, Pocahontas, not 11 years old, like 19 years old or whatever, saving John Smith from getting his head bashed in. That's romantic. That's a good Romeo and Juliet story. But it's not reality. But you can see why so many people latch onto that myth that John Davis completely made up. But hey, which version of the story do you like better?